Welcome to Politics NY with Sky Behind the Curtain, where we're going behind the scenes and speaking with industry insiders about what is going on in New York City and state politics. And what an exciting and interesting day, seeing that Cuomo resigned and now Kathy Hochul is going to be in charge. So it really is the year of the woman. And right now I'm with Becky Stern, a woman working in communications at Pythia Public. She's a communications director, and she works on a whole bunch of different campaigns and advocacy groups. And one of them we were just talking about has to do with forcible touching in the workplace, which is something that Cuomo's being accused of. So welcome to the show, Becky Stern.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us what it is that you're working on that's pertinent to this day and age.
Yes, so one of the bills that's in front of the legislature that actually passed in the New York State Senate this past cycle, but was stalled in the Assembly, is the Adult Survivors Act. So it is legislation that would provide a one-year look-back window for adult survivors of sex abuse. Then that is forcible touching is involved, but it's all Article 130 crimes in the Penal Code, who have aged out of the statute of limitations, and it would give them a one-year look-back window to sue in civil court the institution that covered up the abuse or the abuser. So it's modeled off the Child Victims Act, which you may be familiar with, that provided a whole host of things. It changed the statute of limitations for child sex abuse to allow people to be able to file criminal claims and civil claims, and also provided a one-year look-back window for survivors of child sex abuse to file in civil court. That was actually extended during the pandemic. So for 2 years now, it actually ends this Friday. So if you are a survivor of child sex abuse and you would like to hold your abuser accountable or the institution, you have until Friday to file a civil claim. And that we've seen great success. Over 8,000 Child Victims Act cases have been filed in New York.
So this Adult Survivors Act now, before this legislation, what was in place for adults who had experienced this?
Nothing. In the early 2000s, this New York State did do a lot of statute of limitation reform. So that's proactive. So if you were raped or abused, I actually don't know the exact year that it happened, but it did open the statute of limitations to be 20 years or in some cases none. So that was proactive. But if you happen to be abused during that time, and as we know with I'm trying to think of with the science of trauma, it can take years or decades for people to process what happened to them, that they may not report immediately, or even in some cases they report and nothing happens, or they're not believed. So this would provide survivors now, should it pass, a one-year window in civil court to have an opportunity to hold them accountable if they want.
So with this legislation, the Adult Survivors Act, if this were to, what's the next step with it?
So right now with Kathy Hochul, we are hopeful that she will take this as something that she wants to push forward. And at the Assembly, I think now is the time for the Assembly to put forward pro-survivor legislation. There's not just this, there's a sexual harassment working group, as a whole host of bills that are for worker protection. I think if you can do lip service and you can say you stand with survivors, but to actually do important change would be passing this legislation.
So, but this is only a one-year look back?
Yeah, it's a one-year look back window. That's what other states have done. It can be extended like they did with the Child Victims Act to allow more people. It also, I think it gives a 6-month grace period. So once it's passed, survivors will have like 6 months to like get everything organized to like head into court to file a civil claim, because it can take time. And then the one-year look back window will begin.
But in terms of Cuomo, or for anyone who has been forcibly touched beyond a year ago, how does it?
Some of the statute of limitations is 2 to 5 years. So I think actually a lot of the survivors who are public that we know fit into the statute of limitation. I mean, we see the DAs all over. In Albany, she filed a criminal complaint. But if other survivors who, when they feel ready to come forward, want to, and if the Adult Survivors Act is passed, they fit into that window, they could have an opportunity to sue him in civil court.
Now you mentioned DA, which reminds me of our friend Todd Kaminsky, who's running for DA in Nassau County. So I met him when he was in the Assembly, then he was in the Senate, and now he's running for Nassau County District Attorney. So how is that going?
It's great. I mean, Senator Kaminsky is an incredible lawmaker and has been working his entire career for this position as a former federal prosecutor. And I'm excited for him. The election's in November 2nd in the general election. It's a special, but it'll be in the general.
And
for
I know
my Nassau County voters.
Yeah, Nassau County voters. Extern, thanks for joining us from Pythia Public on Politics NY with Sky Behind the Curtain.
Thanks for having me.